Hey, Violet.
Welcome to the Brave Entrepreneur Podcast. I am your host, Jena Rodriguez. Entrepreneurs are leading the way and creating a whole new level of possibility. Each week, listen in to hear how brilliant entrepreneurs share their brave secrets. Entrepreneurship is not the easy way. It is the brave way. Now let's get our brave on.
Hey, Violet. How are you, my friend? Where are you and what are you up to?
Hey, Jena. I'm so excited to be joining and spending time with you today. I am in super steamy, very hot Miami. It's only 180 degrees here.
Wow. This is why I moved from Texas, because we're about even with the whole humidity level and all that. And living in California has been pretty spoiled.
I've heard.
Spoiled. But well, I was so looking forward to this conversation. We have so much fun together, and you're the proud and owner and founder of FemCity. So just tell everybody a little bit about, of course, what you do in the world and what that's all about, and then we want to dive into your story. So we'll start there.
Sure. So FemCity is a members-only organization, and we help women through personal development and business classes online and locally as well. During COVID-19, obviously everything is now virtual, but we do have about 120 something locations in the United States and Canada. We were on the cusp of growing into more communities. And of course, as always, when we have plans in life, sometimes we get little challenges and bumps along the way, but we're really excited to still connect with all of our femmes, as we call them, through virtual platforms now. So anything we can do to help women, that's what we do.
Yeah, I love it. And that's how I know you, is I'm a global woman of FemCity. And I've just watched you not only, I think, it's been a couple of years. I don't know, maybe going on at least four. Yes, at least four, maybe 5 now.
Maybe 10.
Maybe 10. That's how I feel. I know you that long. That's how I feel. We are definitely soul sisters. And that's what's interesting, is I know you've shifted things in the company at times. The leadership has changed, ideas have changed, and here we are, just one more change, one more pivot, right, is the big word. And so, it's not like you're new to change and adversity and, the shifts of business, the shifts of life. And so I'd love to kind of step back. When did you start FemCity, and what was that brave shift that you made back then that had you be where you are today?
Sure. So, I love that you shared that, because I feel sometimes when new entrepreneurs or people stepping into creating a side hustle, they get so overwhelmed with just those first couple of steps. And the truth is, as you and I know, it is all about evolution and going really at the flow of where your talent and the service you want to provide to others will actually dictate. So I started FemCity in 2009. I can't believe it.
Nice.
2009. By the way, my vision at the time was just to have Miami and just to do monthly lunches with 20 women. That was literally my focus. I was like, we're just going to do it here for 20 women, get together. I was looking at I was craving community. I was craving being with women that were like me. And I was looking at running for office as well in the city of Miami. So for myself, I really just needed that kind of like sisterhood around me. Yeah. And it's so funny, like I launched it. And by the way, it didn't do well at the beginning also. Like our first lunch had no format. Wasn't that it was like super boring, but it wasn't like, yes, this is amazing, it's going to take over the world. It was just like, oh, okay, so that was interesting. And then I did it again and I did it again. And towards the end of that year, a woman came up to me and said, I really love, it was called FemFessionals at the time. I had trademarked both, another sidestep, FemFessionals and FemCity. And she said, I really love it. I have to drive. You're super selfish for not launching this in another city by me. And that really started to kind of change the evolution of the organization from just in Miami, just 20 women, just lunch, into, okay, let's see what this would be if we launched into other cities. And like anything, and I know you're spiritual also, is that when we receive messages from above through other humans, right, where someone says, you know what, I want FemCity in my backyard, and then you're like, oh, that's great, but then you hear it 10 more times that day, I really took it on as a message from above. And I thought, you know what, I don't know what they see. I really didn't. They see something that I do not see. I need to step forward and just at least use the energy in that direction to see what there is for me to take on. And that's how we started to kind of launch into new markets. We launched from Philadelphia, we launched Fort Lauderdale. And then a couple years later, we pivoted, we evolved again. Google reached out to us and said, hey, we love your communities. We want to teach classes for your members. That was amazing. We had never done that before. This was about 2010, 2011. And they started teaching classes on how to add your business to Google, how to get it listed as a business, and also Google Hangouts and Google Circles, and how it could benefit small business owners. And that was like a huge pivot for us because our femmes loved it. And they said, you know what, I need this more in my life. Social media had really just taken on. By the way, we only started with a Facebook group, like pictures of face, like we had no website, no business model, no monetization, no nothing. And then it just kind of started going in that direction. And I think we evolve every single year. Really, we send out reviews, we see how we're doing. How can we do better? How can we serve more women? How can we really be of value to them? When you ask those questions, you generally will pivot and you will really evolve. And that's where I think a lot of businesses lose that touch because they sit and they think, well, I'm really great. Like, I'm so amazing. I'm fantastic. I don't need to change. You know, I'm just going to sit here and like, it's all. And that's where I think businesses fail. And if you look at some of these really big iconic brands like Blockbuster, where they didn't pivot and they didn't change, or even like a JCPenney's or a Sears, where you see like Target did really well, you can look at some of these iconic brands and see that they also probably kind of fell through the same track. Like, you know, we're the best. We're so great. We're not going to change. I mean, Barney's of New York, right? Barney's downfall, they say Barney's is because they couldn't pivot onto an online e-commerce. That was the part that, you know, they just couldn't really get into. And so, you know, you have those stories all the time, and it's exhausting and it's tiring, but it's also really exciting and filled with passion to go on that route.
Yeah, you know, I was just reading a book recently. I don't know if you've read it, The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. I don't know if you've heard of that one. And, you know, and it talks about being not resilient versus sustainable. And it's like the pitfall is that we as businesses or organizations or whatever, we stay focused on the sustainability versus the resilience. And resilience is being able to respond and shift and change in drastic times, or, you know, really being able to pivot per se, and keep growing and keep expanding and keep thinking long term, not just on the short term. And you know, and so I feel like if we're mission focused, vision focused, and have a passion for something that we do, or the result that we bring, how the vehicle looks, what it shows up as, is not so important. But I think we as human beings, as well as business owners, get attached to the way it is and the way it should be and the way we've done it and the way it's worked, and, you know, and then therefore we don't explore what else is possible. And I think you've done that really, really well. And speaking of, so I just want to shift kind of like, you're a brilliant business owner and founder and leader and all those things. And yet, of course, I love having a conversation about sometimes the deep, dark part of the soul, you know, those pivots that we've had to make. So speak to us about one of the hardest emotional journeys you've had to go through as far as your life. I mean, you've been multiple business owner. Like, how many businesses have you owned since you were like 20 or something?
A lot.
A lot. 9, 10, 20, it doesn't matter. You know, so it's like you've been in this game of, you know, self-leadership, and yet I know that it's the ultimate in personal development, right?
Right.
So what would you say has been was one of the hardest things you've had to face personally?
I think 3 come to mind. The first one is when I started my business at the age of 22. I had just had Christoph, and I was a latchkey kid. I really was home by myself all the time, from probably, let's say, like 6th grade up until high school. And I didn't want that for our kids. And we moved from Miami to Raleigh, North Carolina, and Steve had a great job. And I thought, you know, I don't really, that conversation that most women that are having children have, right? I don't want to put them in daycare all day until 6 o'clock. And I want to be a part of their life And those were the kind of the decisions that I had to make. And so I thought being really in business for myself made it so I could actually have a flexibility and provide financially for my family. So that was my first business. And I think what I learned most about that one and kind of the journey on that is I had no idea what I was doing. I was 22 years old. It was 1994. There's no Google, there's no Amazon, there were no business books. Everything at that time was all about corporate. It was unheard of really to talk about. We did have an SBA and we also had a SCORE. And a friend of mine actually worked for the SBA in Raleigh and she helped me a lot. It was such a long time ago that when I went to the SBA office to pick out a name for the company, it's called Body Elite. It was a book this big and you had to open it. And you had to flip through it to see if anybody else had that name anywhere at all registered. It was like, so, the guts and I think is, you're so dumb that you don't know how risky it is. That was literally me. I didn't know what I was getting into. I made every mistake. I remember I made these little flyers, again, before Canva or PicMonkey or anything. It was like, just sketching it on, on my AOL, whatever, when I got the free
my
disc.
Word document.
My Word document, exactly.
Move things around
I printed it up and I walked in the affluent neighborhoods and I left them on the doors, because I'd seen someone do that. And so I did that. And I remember some of the neighbors coming out and yelling at me that, this was not the neighborhood to do it in. Of course, I had the baby in the backpack, walking up and down, just trying to lift the definition of hustle and just making all the mistakes, because I didn't know any better. And I also didn't have a mentor and I had no guidance, even though the SBA was wonderful and Bryles was amazing. She helped me with more of the setup of it, the actual marketing and the business development, and even like asking for my check, right? Like it was before online payments or Venmo. So it was like, you owe me money. Like even like saying that, in a physical way, like that was a really good lesson. So
yeah,
that had its own lessons of like, how you said, it's all tied to personal development of like believing in your worth. Even when things don't look like they're going well, to keep on going, to have that focus, that integrity that you're going to show up and do the work. The second time was I started my Pilates business. Well, Bianca was born 1999, so I had just gotten my Pilates certification and started my own little Pilates studio. That was a 10-year. It was beautiful. I loved every moment of it. It was a personal boutique, kind of small boutique Pilates studio in Raleigh, North Carolina. And as glorious and as amazing as it was, when I went to sell it, I couldn't sell it. And because it was all about Violette. And so, no one wanted to take it over, even though I had a great manager and I had great teachers and they were all really doing the work. I had my third child. By the time I closed that studio, I had my third child. So I'm not a good holder of babies. I'm a good birther, but I can't hold them in. So I'm always on bed rest. I always have these medical conditions. So I wasn't even there really the last 2 months or 3 months of that pregnancy. They were running it themselves. And that's a whole other story. But I think that really taught me that I need to make things scalable and that it should not ever be about Violette, and it should be a brand that can live on beyond your touch. And so that was a really big lesson. Personal development too, right? It shouldn't always be the Violette show.
Right.
It's okay to have other people shine and for other people to have the spotlight, and lots of leadership skills there. And then when I started FemCity, that was probably the other biggest shift of bravery, because I had to invest so much money. I gave up I had a PR agency at that time, had really great clients like World Wildlife Fund, City of Miami Mayor's Office, worked with Pitbull and Jimmy Buffett on some campaigns, and gave that up because I really felt such a strong connection to femme professionals, FemCity now. I spent so much money, had to pull my kids out of private school, had to sell my Mercedes that I loved. I really had to sacrifice financially. And that was really tough because no one believed in what I saw. And not only was I sacrificing, but it was impacting all of my kids around. So there are some really big moments there as well that, I wish things had been a little bit easier, but I just believed in it so much and poured, everything I had into it. But anyway, so those are 3 snippets of
yeah, the big moments. And no, I love that you shared all that because, and I think it is what we know what we know and we don't know what we don't know. And sometimes that's a blessing, meaning
right.
we just,
right.
I think a lot of my early 20s is it was driven by survival. I was driven by a lot of things. And it was interesting. I wrote this down so I wouldn't forget. you said something at the beginning about knowing what you don't want. And that was part of my drive, is I didn't want a lifestyle that I was raised in. Obviously, you know, I went from child of divorce and then went into a domestic violence household for 5 years, and my mother's choice of boyfriend. And I was like, don't want that. Don't want that in the future. Don't want that for me. Don't want that for my children in the future, whenever that happens, right? I'm in my early 20s. And so I think that might be a great place to anchor for people in this conversation, especially right now, is getting clearer. You know, sometimes it's harder to get clear on what you want, you know, because your imagination only reaches so far. And even like what you said, it's like, you know, the FemCity you started, and then 1 year later, you didn't even notice, you weren't even seeing multiple chapters, and then this person creates this possibility. So we can say we want something, but we sometimes can't see beyond our limitation. And so I think it's sometimes easier to recognize what we don't want, how we don't prefer things to be. And so, yeah, for me, I had a lot of driving forces, because I had a lot of, this is not how okay with me. This is not how I want it to be. So what do I need to do to change that trajectory? And so I just wanted to anchor that, because I thought that was really big for you in that moment. And then every lesson thereafter is, you know, I don't want it to be the Violette show. So how do I create the next business where it's scalable,
Right.
or, you know, and so it's like every time we do put our brave on and put our foot forward and take a risk and take a leap of faith, there's something you're going to learn, and it may be learning what you don't want. Right. You know, and I always say we live in the contrast. And so if we always lived in a life or a world where it was only 72 degrees, I do in California, but I'm just kidding. But if it was always 72, I'm just kidding. I do love it here. Only 72 degrees, we actually would never appreciate it, first of all, and we would never know what 73 felt like, or 69, you know,
Right.
and certainly not 100 degrees. But it's like in the contrast, we identify our preferences. We identify where we can grow and expand, or, you know, or move this direction instead of that direction. And I think that's what you've beautifully displayed, is that it's not about having it all figured out in the beginning, or ever for that matter. But it is taking that next step. And like you said, we are definitely divinely guided. That's how we live our lives. And so the message or the opportunity or the idea drops down either in our mind at the right moment. And if we're listening, that's the key, right? We have to listen, or a conversation with someone. And then you have to be willing to say yes if it feels like the right next step. And so, yeah, I've been here quite a few years with you with the FemCity, and watched you expand, watch you, you know, have to figure things out, and how do I add more value? How do we go virtual right now? You know, and it's just amazing to watch.
I love that you mentioned that.
Yeah,
go ahead.
dive in.
I was going to say, I love that you mentioned that, because that's really the question that I think a lot of lives pivot from, is that we may not know what we want and how it will look, and like moving to California and what, you know, but we have that awareness, that awakening, when we say,
yes,
I know I was not designed for this. Like,
right.
This is not what God has wants for me. Like, this is not how I want to play my life out. And I remember having those, there was one time in our life where we were financially broke, we had hit rock bottom. And I remember being in the car and going and having that moment of saying, I did not sign up for this. Like, this is not what I envisioned my life to be.
Yeah.
And, you know, what would someone else, and I didn't even know who that person would be, but what would someone who defined and designed their life, what would they do in this moment to get out of it? And if you don't have a mentor, or if you don't know someone, just starting with that question of like, I don't want this, whether it's a bad marriage, or you're in a financial like rock bottom, or you're in an abusive friendship, or whatever it is that's going on, is that once you have that question come up, that is where the wheels and the energy starts changing, so that you have the power then to say, I am worthy. I'm more worthy than this moment. This is not the value that I think the divine has given me for this lifetime. And then you start taking the actions, and then you start seeking, like you said, that person shows up and says something.
Right.
And for whatever reason, you're like, wow, that's really, it could have just been your neighbor walking the dog and saying something. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, that's like,
Yeah.
the sign, the message, the clarity, the confirmation, whatever. And I think that what you just pulled out, Jena, is like really profound. And I think that's where lives start shifting, is when they realize this is not for me.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's good. I'm glad I brought it up too. No, I'm kidding. So I know you and I giggle all the time, but this is so profound. Number one, I am so committed to help raising the level of consciousness on the planet, right?
Right.
And the byproduct of that is eradicating unrealized potential, because I think inside of your consciousness and raising your conscious level and being self-aware, being in self-leadership, taking personal ownership and responsibility for your life, if you like it now or you don't like it, like you own it, right? And then you ask the right questions. That's what I just heard. And I'm a question asker. I inquire, and then it shows up. The answer isn't always in the moment, and it's not always coming to me from what I expected to come from. Like you said, it's a neighbor walking the dog, or
always some other passive. It's like always,
yeah.
You're like, please have Jena call me. And then all of a sudden it's like, no, it doesn't come from Jena. It'll come from like, your neighbor or someone you meet in the elevator, or
Right.
like, and I think that's another thing that humans think, is that like they believe that the messages are going to come packaged in a certain way.
Yes.
And they rarely do.
Yeah. It doesn't show up that way.
There's no evolution. There's no connectivity to spirit when it's like packaged the way you want it. It's going to always be packaged in another way, because it makes you seek it, ask the questions, look to see where it guides you. So anyway.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yes. And I think, what I'm hearing is, so I speak a lot about attachment, right? And it's like being attached to the form that it needs to show up in. And I love vision boards. I do them occasionally, and sometimes I do a digital one or whatever, or get with the girlfriends. But more importantly, I think the important aspect of a vision board is to actually surrender it up. You can put the picture of it, you can put it's like the image, and yet the moment you attach yourself to that's how it has to show up, then I think that's where we actually slow ourselves down. So, my new hashtag is speed of receive. Hashtag speed of receive. And so for me, what that means is we have to actually get out of our own way. We have to actually start asking the right questions and become the container for the thing you say you want. And yet the speed of receive is not happening because you're blocking it. You're repelling it by not letting go of the things that you're attached to. And so I'd love to ask you, go ahead.
I was going to say, I have a story to illustrate what you said.
Anchor it. Yes, go for it. Go for it.
So when I started this PR agency a couple of years ago before FemCity, I wanted this PR agency to work with the community. I'm obsessed with Miami. I had lived away for many years, came back, and I just was totally obsessed with it. And so I was on every board, raising as much money as possible. I was like,
clean this place up.
Right, I'm going to clean it up. And I thought this would be a great PR agency for me to actually work with community campaigns and also environmental issues. And I had thought about, just like a little thought, had that thought. And I had started FemCity at the time, actually just the little Miami one. So it wasn't anything what it was now. We were just meeting once a month. And I had met this wonderful woman, for whatever reason right now, I can't think of her name, but it'll come to me. And she said, oh my gosh, Violet, I had this, this opportunity come through, but it's too small for me, but I think it'd be a good fit for you. It's just way too small. She had this really big PR agency. And so she's like, I'd like to put you guys in touch. Okay. That's that point where you pivot. I had created this in my mind, but here's this one random woman I had just met who's introducing. I could have said, no thanks. It could have said small, it's not whatever. So it had all these titles and things. So I could have easily said no. I could have easily not followed up. I could have easily not responded. So, which a lot of humans do, by the way. Those opportunities come up. It's a little flicker of a light, but they put it out because it's not the candle that they want.
Yeah,
it's
not what it looks like. Yeah.
It's not what it looks like. It looks like it's going to get over here. And so we met. We had the meeting. I end up landing the account. It was a $20,000 account for like 3 months of work.
Wow.
My first client, and it was World Wildlife Fund. it happened so fast. I didn't even have the sunbiz.org. I didn't even have my company formed yet, legally speaking. And so that's a perfect, like, I could have said no, I could have not followed up, I could have not prepared for it. I could have, all these things that I could have not done because it didn't match or look or feel the way that I thought it was going to be packaged. And the reality is that that little connection, and I was kind to her, right? So I must have left an impression on her because she thought of me. She extended the, you know, how many times people get opportunities to go, nope, it's not, it's too small for me. And they don't think about Jena or Violet, you know, so like there are levels of the divine in that interaction that I could have said no, it could have fallen off, it could have this and that, you know, she could have not, but all of those pieces had to add up, but I had to show up with integrity. I had to show up, you know, and understand that it was a gift no matter what. And I think that a lot of times I see humans that and then they're like, well, my life, I can't create my life. I can't design my life because I'm here thinking about $20,000 and I'm sitting here and it's like not showing up. No one's showing up at my door with a briefcase of $20,000 in cash. And the reality is it's not going to show up like that. Like it shows up in the most bizarre of places, but it always shows up. You just have to also match it in energy and in integrity to move forward.
Yeah.
So that's like a little story based on what you just said.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. And, you know, what I'm hearing is, you know, and I just want people to kind of wrap their head around, like, what do they need to ask themselves? And my opinion is if you want the speed of receive to increase, right, then it's a matter of identifying what is it that you actually have to let go of, what belief, what story, you know, what container are you in that you're so deep in it you can't see outside of that container. And I did this exercise even for myself, you know, and it's like if I wanted someone to hand me $1 million, right, not make it, not earn it, not take a year, not take 5 years, not whatever, give me a check for $1 million, who would I have to be and what do I have to let go of, for example? Right. It was just an exercise. And because you actually have to think about it differently, because the mind is like, well, how do I do it? How do I get there? How do I figure it out? How do I make it happen? And instead I heard, I have to give up that I have value only when I make it. I have to give up that I'm impressive if I'm the one that does it, that I'm the one that is the creator of it. So in my life, like I said, I came from a lot of survival mechanisms. So it was about, I have to make it happen because nobody else is. Nobody in my life is making this happen. So I got to take control. I got to make it happen. And now I'm looking at life because the speed of receive, the ability, the possibility, the availability for those amazing gifts to show up, even the $20,000 first client that you don't even have a shingle on your business yet, right? Is that you have to like open the container. You have to like let go of whatever you think it means, that it's like you said, you know, it's like, oh, this is too small for me too, you know, because the truth is the lifetime value of that client, I would assume, probably grew from there. And, and even if it didn't, it led to the next client, which is the next lifetime value. And so anyway, I would love for people to just know, and I'm going to like ask you the same question. What is it that you got to let go of in order to become who you're becoming? And so I want to kind of wrap this up with, who are you becoming? What's the next level of Violet that you can see right now? Whether it's emotionally, spiritually, you know, physically, like whatever, you know, wealth wise, whatever it is, what's that next thing that, and then what is it that you can see that you have to let go of?
I think when I think about what and it's going to sound so hokey pokey, but like the legacy that you want to leave behind. Like I go through that often, right? Especially like a legacy, like when you think about like when you leave Earth, how do you want those around you to feel and have shifted in their own life? And that could be that you're a teacher in a kindergarten classroom. It could be that you're a nurse, you know, helping people shift into a better state. I mean, that legacy that I say doesn't have to be the level of like, you know,
the Warren Buffett legacy,
or Warren Buffett, or you know what I mean? Like you can change the world by just being in service. And so I think sometimes, I mean, this is a question that I wake up with every day. Like how can I be of service? Even today was my meditation. It was a little bit longer. You know, energies are really chaotic lately. And so how do I serve? How do I, if I want to have 1 million women have the support and have that community that they need to just have other women believe in themselves. What do I need to do to step forward? And that started really a couple years ago, where I wouldn't do my own PR. Even though I know how to do PR, I wouldn't do it because I thought like it was such an ego thing, like to pitch FemCity. Like what I'm really doing is pitching Violet, and like that's so gross. Like ew, like here I am like pitching myself. But I had to change it in my mind to say, if I want the world to have FemCity, whether it's in Bulgaria or in Havana, Cuba, or in Philly, wherever, then I have to release all of this ridiculousness and move forward in action and service, and then share FemCity through podcasts, through YouTube,
Yes.
through speaking. I mean, that's where I can pivot and help the world, is through that. So for me, it was really hard for me to release that whole thing about like the pitching the PR, and my mother was narcissist and also mentally ill, so I had all these like stories of things, and like but I had to release it in order to step forward and say, it's not ego, it's not about Violet, it's about the work that we do. I'm moving forward with that. I'm going to pitch, and as soon as I started doing that, we got into like all these magazines and newspapers. So I think it happens to all of us, and as we elevate to that next platform, there's a whole other series of things that we have to let go. I mean, that's the other misconception, is that once we get to a certain level of success, I know everything, I'm perfect, I know exactly what to do. The reality is there's more stories, more things to get rid of.
I'm uncovering more dark stuff.
Oh gosh, I know, like never ends. You're like, please just let me live a simple life.
Well, and it's interesting. So, like if you ponder, like, how do you live a simple life? Then you have to let go of it, that it's hard, that it isn't, that it's complicated, that it, and I think a big one for a lot of people that I witness is that, they find their value in the hard. They find their value in making everything dramatic and making everything hard. And it's like, what is it inside of you that requires the overcome, the gotta get through it? And, and so there's, I'm personally unpacking a lot of deep, dark stories that are keeping me from playing the biggest game I can play. Right. And I think that's the bravest thing we can do, is to look at ourselves, own our stuff, and keep up leveling that conscious level, because there's no place that we arrive at, and it's just, we just keep becoming something more, or something closer to who we actually are, right? Our authentic self. And
as you evolve, you're also inspiring others to evolve.
Yeah.
And as you evolve, you can share more. So like if someone's listening right now and going, I actually like a simple life, I really don't want to evolve. I just want to play small. There's no risk in playing small. No one's going to judge me. I'm not going to have any haters. It's going to be super simple. I'm just going to like lay low in life, right? So that's the option that all of us have. I don't think that you and I are super gifted, that like, we're the chosen ones. Like literally we are humans. Everyone else can actually up level just like we did. But the truth is that when we start kind of delving in, and it's horrible and it's messy and it's dirty and you cry and you get your pain and you relive things and all that kind of stuff. It's not pretty. It's not sexy. It's not like, like all these bloggers like, oh my gosh, I dove deep and now I'm perfect. Like, it's like horrible. But as you're doing that, you give other people the inspiration to then also say, you know what? I heard her, Jena, I'm going to go ahead and also level up as well. And as we share our stories, and then our power is also greater to those around us.
Yeah. 100%. Hello.
And I don't know if my daughter's showing up in the background. Sorry.
No, she's not. She gets to wave. And I'm with you on that, because then it goes back to being clear in the contrast. So if you don't want a big life or a bigger life, or to evolve, or to have a legacy, or to create something that, that you feel good about, and you want to choose the simple life, which there's nothing wrong with either direction. And absolutely. I think it just comes down to, what do you want and what do you not want? And not making it mean anything about anyone else or yourself for wanting what you want, or staying away from the don'ts. And I think that's just my mission. I mean, from a very young age, it's like, I felt like I was meant for something bigger than the circumstances I was in. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get there, but one step in front of the other. And now I can feel it's like I've I've stepped into that next level of evolution and conscious evolution. And that's, you know, you arrive at it when you arrive at it, or you never do. I mean, it's like, I just am on the journey. I'm in the commitment to live as consciously as possible. That's all. That's all
And
that
I love what you do, Jenna. Like, I love that, you know, we've been friends for many years. I love that as you arrive to that new place, that you document it.
Yeah.
And then you share it with others. I think that's really, and again, you know, talking about the evolution is that you're giving then other people the opportunity to also evolve, and you're giving them the tools to do that. Because everything that I know of you, like whether it's your book or the coaching sessions that you do, that you are documenting the process and the format and the templates, and you're defining it, and you're like, where are you on this? And I think that's I think that your journey has been very inspirational for many people.
Wow. Well, thank you. Back at you, girlfriend. I mean, seriously, you got some things you're even willing to share with them today. I love you, and I appreciate that. I received that, and I feel and I didn't always. I wanted to hide. It's way easier to hide out. It's way easier not to get on a stage. I didn't speak until 2013, like, and now that's, you know, like, wow, that's far away. But I'm like, I spent half of my life avoiding it, you know? So it gets easier, people. It gets easier, and you start to trust yourself, and you start to trust the rightness of it. And so therefore here's a podcast that I've been running for 5 years. Right. And it's like, and I get to have these amazing conversations with people like you, and you're doing the same. For you to spearhead and lead, how many chapters or how many FemCities do we have? 100.
I need to count. I'll count this week. It's like 100.
Growing.
I keep saying 120. Well, actually, we stopped, and we were on a really good track of like adding more and more communities. And obviously, with this whole COVID thing, we had one application a couple weeks ago, and I was like, oh my gosh, this lady's like willing to launch it all virtual. I mean, it's amazing. Nice. And we had South Bend, Indiana, that launched recently, Nancy, and she did a great job. She did it all virtual, and they're coming together. I mean, the format for FemCity, as you know, is like incorporating you know, community and gratitude and positivity. And anyway, that was also an evolution, as you guys know now.
Yeah. I mean, here we are. There's nothing to stop what the purpose, right? And the vision that you have, because it's not about the container, right? Virtual, in person, or both, or not, or whatever.
Right. Or all the above. Like,
yeah, the purpose is still expanding. So yeah, congratulations. All right. So in wrap up, what is the best way people can connect with you?
So for FemCity, you can go to femcity.com, and there's a free 30-day trial membership. You can go sign up for free. You have free group coaching with me. We do a lot of online connectivities. We do live classes as well. It's a great group. You'll make lots of friends, I promise you. If you show up, you have to show up though. You can't just be like in your room, never logging in, and then be like, you know, you have to like,
where are my people?
Exactly. We will hug you, but you have to step out so we can hug you.
Yeah.
And personally, you can follow me at Violette de Ayala pretty much everywhere: Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, all that jazz.
All that jazz. Yes. Wonderful. And we'll put all that in the show notes too. Thank you for the 30-day trial. I highly recommend it. I'm a global myself, so jump in. And the final question I have for you is, if this was your very last episode or interview or stage, like there are no more podcasts you have to worry about showing up on, right? This was it. This was the end. What would be the message you want to share with the world?
It's funny you say that, because I'm like, it's 2020. It could be the end. Like maybe podcasts like just come down. But I think really the message would be is that to not listen to the voices that hold you back from the purpose that you have to share. You know, it's not that one's more gifted than the other when it comes to humans. It's that some of us just move forward because we believe, and we remove all that negativity, whether it's someone who told you can't, or you won't ever, or you yourself are telling yourself that. Like, really just remove all of the negativity of the thoughts that you have, or maybe even the people around you, the energy, and step forward in that area, because everyone has just beautiful value and everyone has something to give. And many years ago, what a close friend of mine said, you know, what do you want for your kids? And I said, well, I want them to change the world. And she started laughing. She's like, oh my gosh, that's a big, huge, like, you know. But I was like, no, because you can change the world in every facet of your life, whether you, and again, I go back to like, you know, teachers that my kids had, that I had, that changed my life, you know, or a nurse, or, you know, a neighbor. I mean, we can change the lives of others just by being kind believing in them and offering that space for them to be who they are, embrace them. So that is what I wish others, I guess, as my last
big
my last word. Exactly. Believe in yourself. Don't believe the negative words that you say.
Believe in yourself. And I think you said it, you know, I speak to like the 3 levels of evolution that we are on is like brave by survival, which I did really well. It was hard. And then there's a level of brave by choice. And now you start to create your own perception of reality. And, you know, it's like, oh, I got something I can do here to actually change this stuff. And now you and me both, I believe, is in what you just said, purpose, brave by purpose. So that means the actions and the get on the video and get on the stages and play bigger and is not about me. It's about the purpose, and it's about something much bigger, and the calling and the, you know, the wisdom that is supposed to be pushed forward and being the ripple effect. And that's how our children are going to do it. That's how each of us listening, right? Everybody listening, that's how we're going to do it. That's how we're going to outsmart the egoic, you know, level of fear and all that, especially right now. Like that doesn't have to be the prevalent thing if we all rise up. And so thank you, Violet, for rising up. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jena.
Yeah, you're welcome. And to all of my brave masters, right, out there in the world, until next time, let's go get our brave on. Talk to you soon.